Greetings and welcome everyone. I am Mala Ganige from North Dakota State University, currently serving as chair of NAPB Graduate Student Working Group. On behalf of NAPB Graduate Student Working Group, it gives me a great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all of you joining us for this significant panel discussion centered around diversity, equity, and inclusion within the scientific community. As we all know, the scientific community plays a fundamental role in shaping the world we live in. However, to truly unlock the potential of scientific progress, we must recognize that diversity is not just a buzzword or a checkbox, but a catalyst for excellence. And studies have consistently shown that diverse teams and perspectives lead to more innovative and impactful outcomes. So by embracing DEI, we can unleash the full potential of scientific discovery and address the most pressing challenges facing humanity. So during our panel discussion, we have the privilege of hearing from distinguished experts and leaders in the scientific field who will share their experiences, insights, and strategies to promote DEI within the scientific community. So as we dwell into this discussion, I encourage all of you to actively engage and ask thought-provoking questions. And I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to our esteemed panelists today for graciously lending their expertise and insights into this important conversation. Your commitment to DEI in science is an inspiration to all of us. I would also like to express my appreciation to each and every one of you in the audience, as your presence signifies your dedication to creating a more inclusive scientific community. So now, without any delay, I would like to pass it on to Andy to introduce our today's panelists.
Great.
Andy.
Thanks, Mala. So we have three panelists with us today, each kind of covering a different area, public sector, private sector, and then even current student. So hopefully we get a good range of views and opinions and perspectives that we get to hear from. So first I'll introduce Dr. Ron Walcott. He serves as the inaugural Vice Provost for Graduate Education and the Dean of Graduate School at the University of Georgia. He is a professor of plant pathology in the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. His research focuses on pathogens that affect commercially important vegetables. Walcott's honors include receiving the CAES D.W. Brooks Diversity Award for faculty and being named the UGA Senior Teaching Fellow and a Teaching Academy member. He earned his PhD in plant pathology from the University of Georgia and his bachelor's and master's degree also in plant pathology from Iowa State University. Next, we have Dr. Tabare Abadie. He is a distinguished research laureate at Corteva Agrosciences. He is internationally recognized in the areas of plant breeding and genetic research, having made significant contributions in education, extension, outreach, and advocacy. He's the founder and developer of the Plant Science Symposia series, a student-driven program that includes more than 70 universities and organizations around the world dedicated to advance higher education and empowering future plant scientists. Dr. Abadie is originally from Uruguay, where he was a wheat breeder and university professor for more than 20 years before joining then Pioneer Hybrid International in 2003 in the United States. He obtained an ag degree in agronomy from University of Republica of Uruguay in 1982, Diploma of High Studies from University of Birmingham, UK in 1985, Master's in 92, and PhD in 94. PhDs from the University of Minnesota, and a postdoc at UC Davis from 99 to 2001. Finally, we have Amaka, a current student. Amaka Ifeduba is currently pursuing her PhD degree in the Department of Horticultural Sciences at Texas A&M after receiving the prestigious International Borlaug Scholarship. She works as a research assistant in the potato breeding program and potato breeding and variety development program. Her research is currently focused on understanding the dynamics of heat tolerance in different potato varieties with hopes of identifying developing heat tolerant potato varieties. Prior to joining Texas A&M University, Amaka received her master's degree in cytogenetics and plant breeding and her bachelor's degree in plant science and technology from the University of Jos, Nigeria. And these are our panelists. We were gonna provide them each with a little opportunity to further introduce themselves and give them a platform to talk about whatever they like for a few minutes. So we can start out with Dr. Walcott, if you like.
Well, I'm happy to do so. And before I start, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today, and thank you for raising this very important and timely topic. Also, shout out to my fellow panelists. I look forward to hearing what you have to say, and I'll take just a couple of minutes to kind of highlight some aspects of my career trajectory that I think are relevant to the conversation. I'm originally from Barbados, a small island in the Caribbean, so I came here a long time ago. And, I think it's important because it informs the discussion around diversity. When I came, I went to Iowa State University, which ended up being a great place. But initially, the transition was quite challenging in terms of cultural shifts and preparing for that, to being immersed in a new and a different space. I'll also mention that in addition to my responsibilities at the University of Georgia, I am the president of the American Phytopathological Society. And within that society, we're also having lots of conversations about diversity and inclusiveness in our society for our members to be recognized and have groups that were not necessarily celebrated in the past, having an opportunity to have their voices heard. I think it's critically important not only to recruit people into these new spaces, but support them in an appropriate way so that it can thrive and succeed. And I think representation is key. I happen to be the first Black male president of our society, and I take it quite seriously because it highlights that there's opportunities to play important pivotal roles and to normalize the idea of seeing underrepresented minorities in roles of leadership in many aspects of our society. The other thing that I think is important is that for a short period of time, maybe 5 years, I served as the assistant dean for diversity in the College of Ag and Environmental Sciences here at the University of Georgia, where we were very strategic in terms of recruitment and supporting students from underrepresented groups in terms of high school summer internship programs, which is important for building pools, and then recruiting students into our undergraduate population. And now at the University of Georgia, I serve as the grad school dean, and I have some very strong thoughts around the role of mentorship in helping students understand not only how to be professionals in areas around plant sciences, but also helping faculty members understand their responsibilities and developing the cross-cultural skills to be highly effective at mentoring, motivating, and helping students succeed. So again, my comments will be informed by those experiences. Again, thank you for being here, and I'll give my fellow panelists an opportunity to share some perspectives as well.
Dr. Abadie.
Thank you, Andy. I think everybody kind of know me already. I have been interested in the topic of diversity, I would say, ever since I came to the US. During my younger years, it was probably the situation was a little bit different, both being in Uruguay, which is a different culture, and the perspective of diversity is seen in a different way. And also because, there wasn't, that social pressure at that time that could be, make me make more aware of the situation. When I came to the US, I have always been interested in the topic of diversity, and later on, more recently, on a broader sense, on ID&E, right? I mean, more than just diversity. And personally, I was interested in those topics because they affected me as a foreigner in a way, working as Ron was saying, in Iowa, not only in the company, but also living in Iowa, right? I mean, that was something that, made me aware of the topic and made me more sensitive and sensible, about this area. And lately, I was asked to participate on some of the efforts that the company has been doing to address these issues. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't think I need to explain all the things that we are doing, but one of my targets has always been to pass from the anecdotal to the more permanent, and so try to develop relatively long-lasting programs that could have a longer-term impact on cultural change in our organizations and in our society, and more specifically in our scientific societies too. I think I will leave it there, and I will give the chance to Amaka to share her perspective.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited that we are beginning to talk about these topics. Personally, I'm from Nigeria. Currently, I'm in Nigeria, actually. I went for summer break. So being in Nigeria all my life, like growing up in Nigeria for bachelor's degree, master's, the culture is so different. And the time I came to the US for my PhD, it was actually like a huge shock, because first and foremost, I was by myself, leaving my son and husband and family in Nigeria, and being by myself, being able to adapt and thrive and try to succeed was really very stressful for the first couple of months. And not necessarily because anybody was trying to do something wrong to you, but just because yourself, you don't really feel included, because there's a lot of things you don't understand. And it takes a while for you to begin to feel like a part of the group. So that's I feel like that's a challenge of maybe an international student, from the level of a student who is being uprooted from their country and then going into a new country. You're going there and a lot of expectations is placed on you. You're taking your courses, you're doing your research. You barely understand the accent of the people. It takes a while, and even your own accent, a lot of people will tell you, come again, say that again. Some people ask you, are you speaking English? I've had people ask me that, like, do you understand English? And then you wonder, you say, English is my first language. It's more like your accent can be different, but it doesn't mean you're not speaking the language. So my understanding about the topic of diversity, and especially inclusion, I feel like the areas that a lot of people need to understand is that inclusion is different from tolerance. People tend to mistake the two things, whereby people tolerate you, but don't necessarily give you the opportunity to be yourself. It's like, I feel like for inclusion to really make sense, differences need to be celebrated rather than stigmatized. People should be happy and proud of who they are, because at the end of the day, a lot of us bring different cultural, who we are is based on our nature and nurture, and then we'll have different opinions to bring to the table, and that would give more opportunities for problems to be solved based on different ideas and life experiences. So I think this is just what I would like to say at the beginning. So thank you again for having me on this panel. I'm happy to learn from all of you that are more experienced, and we continue the discussion.
Awesome. Okay, so we have a few, I guess we can open this up to everyone. Is there anybody, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. Otherwise, if we have some pauses and silence, I've got a few questions from registration that I can pull from, but would like to open it up to everyone. Feel free to ask or talk about whatever you like.
I also highly encourage all the students to turn on their cameras to make the communication effective. Thank you.
Okay, I'll pull a question from registration. What could be improved in your workplace to make you feel better integrated in the context of diversity, inclusion, and equality? So I think this is kind of what Amaka was talking about a little bit ago, but would like to hear all three of your thoughts.
Maybe I'll go first. I work at a university. Many of you are familiar with how universities work, and in many instances, they're large and complex organizations with many subcultures. So I would say, in my experience, when we are recruiting diverse or students that are from different cultural backgrounds, sexual orientation, gender, et cetera, we welcome them and we embrace them, but then they come into our community and what they experience is sometimes not what we control or what we can manage. So for example, when we recruit you to our graduate programs or even our undergraduate programs, we want you to come and feel welcome, but then you're in our cities, you're in our towns, you're outside of our towns, you're working in rural areas, and they are engaging people who are maybe not sharing the same perspectives. And so it becomes difficult to sort of control what the experiences might be. I have a story from when I lived in Iowa, and I was out in a soybean field doing some inspections. And I'm 6 feet 6 inches tall, so I'm quite a large person. And so someone, again, this was a long time ago, someone thought it odd that I would be standing in a soybean field in the middle of Iowa. So they called the police, which is definitely not ideal, right? And so I'm trying to navigate this situation of what could I be doing in a soybean field that would be threatening or problematic. And there's obviously a lack of understanding of sort of how that might impact someone. And particularly today, with the opportunity for misunderstanding, it could be problematic. Nonetheless, one of the things that's really important is for orientation, for when we welcome people to our community, make sure they appreciate and understand the communities they're coming into. Because we can't control all those spaces. So here at the University of Georgia, for all of our graduate students, we have something that we call Grad First. So it's called the first year introduction to research, the first year introduction to research and scholarly training. And it's a situation, every incoming our graduate student needs to be in a community of 15 graduate students with a faculty member who will talk not only about sort of some topical area, but there are some key elements that we want students to understand. So Amaka was talking about, fitting in and understanding the cultural differences or even the language barriers, even if you speak English. But the biggest issue we find is when students come in, sort of they're isolated, they're the one, maybe the only person from their hometown, and they have a difficult time connecting to and quickly understanding what the culture is on campus. And so this gives an opportunity to meet people in a controlled space and to have conversations about what is it like to live on campus? How do you navigate? Where are the mental health resources? Where are the opportunities for us to get what we need so that we can better succeed as we transition into a new space? So I think that ability to transition in a safe space, to ask questions that you might consider, I don't want to seem stupid, or I don't want to seem like I understand what's happening, but a space to answer questions that anybody coming from outside of our community would have. We would have a space where you can say, well, how do you do this? Or how do you do that? Or if I'm stressed about being away from home, how do I get resources to help me cope with that? And I think that's really important to help people make that transition. Again, once you get there and you figure out the lay of the land and you build your networks, it's fine. But for many students, the struggle is in that transitory phase where you're trying to understand and learn that new culture or that new environment. And that's where I think many of our students struggle, and maybe unnecessarily struggle and have challenges the rest of their way. So I think onboarding, orientation, helping people to understand where the resources are and sort of making that cultural shift, that's really critical to success.
If I would add just a bit to what he said, I feel like something that would really help, again, is orientation to people to take note of their unconscious bias. I feel like some people are biased and they don't even know it. That's just it. You can say things to people and you feel like you are just being you, but what you've said is so hurtful to them because it's really so different. So I feel like there should be more awareness and more opportunities for both the people who are not the minority, those who are the majority, to have more understanding and more empathy and more open-mindedness to know that, yeah, you were brought up in this environment, someone else is coming from somewhere, you can see things two different ways, and it doesn't mean you are right and they are wrong. It just means you have two different opinions, and that's okay. That's fine. You can always agree to disagree. So I feel if there is a lot of orientation for the students on ground, because at the end of the day, from the graduate student's perspective now I'm talking as a student. When you're coming on campus here, you have the faculties welcoming you, they are kind to you and all of that, but you end up spending more of your time with the students. So at the end of the day, if the students don't understand the differences that you're coming with, it could just be so hard, and they may not be really doing that consciously. It's just unconsciously, and they are not just they don't have the orientation or the knowledge to know how to act in situations like that. And then you realize that if it's people who are not very open to speak, they can just have that isolation and they feel like, oh no, I don't want to relate to this person. Personally, from my own experience, I remember when I came my first semester, like the very first week I was on campus, because coming from Nigeria, we don't register courses the way we do it here, where you have to go online and do everything. In Nigeria, it's not like that. You have to maybe take your course form to your course coordinator and they will sign it and give it back to you. That was the system I was used to. So when I came here, and then it's just like, go register your courses, go figure it out. At the end of the day, I asked the student, I was like, oh, this class, is it in this department or that department? And then the response she gave me was like, you should know that as a PhD student, I don't expect you to ask a question as silly as that. And I felt really stupid. That stayed with me even up till now. This is over a year ago. And that's like, I don't feel like she necessarily wanted to be mean. Maybe, yeah, that question seemed very stupid. Like, why should I be asking? You can go online and find this answer for yourself. But coming from where I was coming from, I didn't think it was that easy. So that was why I asked. So if the students on ground too have that consciousness, they have that orientation, maybe that would help the people who are also coming in, who are the minority, to easily like roll over and adapt and feel more at home and move forward. Yeah.
So my grain of salt here is, I think our organizations have been trying to make a cultural change especially during the last few years, and a lot of times they are forced to actually try to measure that, through quantitative, assessments or something like that. So we have been focusing a lot on some of those assessments, when it comes to diversity, numbers, inclusion, we have been focusing mainly on that. And now, and I think that's fine. I am pretty okay with that. But I think that now our role is to begin working on going to the next level, to actually get into the depth of the cultural change, right? And to be aware of the content of and the reasons and the purposes of what we are doing. So that's one thing. So in that sense, I think that, since I have been working on that and I have been seeing that we have been doing improvement, but, the underlying culture is still not completely changed. I think that one of the things that I would like to see, I would like to focus is on working on bias, on how to identify bias, right? And I agree with Amaka that there is a lot of unconscious bias, but I think that there's still a lot of conscious bias, right? Or structural bias. And people, still are okay with that, right? I mean, they repeat what the company wants them to say, but on their day-to-day basis, they are still okay with some, with their structural bias in a way, right? I mean, and of course, we all have unconscious bias, but I think we also all have some structural bias that we should be overcoming and identifying. So talking more about that would be something that would be beneficial for our organizations, and that includes NAPB, right? I mean, to be very sincere, I don't think NAPB lacks problems in that area. We should really take the discussion on NAPB to a different level, as other organizations are taking it in a more structural way. So that's my comment, I guess, to my answer to that question, Andy.
Andy, could I add something else that was triggered when I was listening to my colleagues talk, and it's about to me mentoring. Mentoring is so critically important, particularly for graduate students. Some of us are lucky to find a good supervisor and mentor, and those of you do, maybe you don't even appreciate how good it is to have an invested mentor who has the cultural competency to be patient and support you in ways that are critical. But in some instances, because maybe when you're an international student or when funding is a consideration, you don't have as much leeway to choose your mentor, right? So you may end up in a really good lab with a mentor who isn't as dynamic in terms of their mentoring skills or capacities. And so you find yourself in a very difficult situation. It creates a tremendous amount of stress, anxiety, and it impacts the success of the student. As a graduate school dean, I'm keenly interested in student success. I think that students, particularly international students that travel from long ways away, they're investing a tremendous amount of human and capital in pursuing their academic goals. But when they find themselves in a situation with a suboptimal mentor, it can really impact not only their potential for success, but it can impact their well-being. So I think in situations where we're mentoring students, it is really important that every mentor has a dynamic range of mentoring skills and is able to respond to the needs of their mentees and centers the mentees, the students, in terms of the engagement. And also, I think it's critically important for mentors to be very clear in terms of their mentoring philosophy. How do I mentor? What are the priorities? How do we communicate effectively? How do we establish guidelines around our engagement? I find that's generally lacking and would be really important to make sure, particularly students like Amaka said, she came here not understanding or appreciating what the cultural norms are. It's important for mentors, PIs, to know this and to be very supportive of students during this transition and be very clear about expectations and how to support students. So I think in particular with graduate students, it is really important that mentors understand their responsibilities and take them seriously, but also mentees have a responsibility. Right. So there's a role that we need to play as mentees, and making sure that those are aligned is key to success, particularly for graduate students.
Maybe just to comment on this, and just to break a lance in favor of NAPB. We do have strong mentoring programs in NAPB, right? And just because I don't want to give the impression that Amaka and I are members of NAPB, right? And we happen to be mentor and mentee too. So we do have very strong mentoring programs, and at least one of the mentoring programs is specifically dedicated to support diversity and inclusion in the organization. So when I said that NAPB should discuss this further, I was saying more at a level that is not just for the graduate students, right? I mean, as an organization, as you mentioned, that is a topic for the Plant Pathology Society. It is a topic for the tri-societies. It is a topic for ASPB, etc. I think it should be, a structural topic of self-awareness for an organization like ours too.
Yeah.
Maybe as a follow-up question to that, so student looking for a new advisor, looking for a new, like a PhD program, what are some things that maybe they could look for in an advisor to kind of avoid some of those challenges that might happen, or ease that transition into the US or whatever that might be? And then alternatively, a current student who's in that tough situation or hard situation with an advisor, what advice or recommendations would you have for them?
Okay, I'm going to respond for maybe students who are trying to find a new advisor. Personally, I think as a student, if you're looking for a new advisor, especially you are outside the US and you're trying to travel all the way to the US, and when you get to the US, it's not going to be easy for you to oh, I don't like this person, so I want to move. So that's difficult. The thing for you to do is to make sure you follow due process. Try as much as possible to get as much information about this person as you can. Do what is like a background check, go read about the lab, try and find out students they've mentored, ask questions, ask about students who they've had as, at the end of the day, students would always be open to students, I believe. So you try to find your information from that grassroots level. Don't just be in a hurry, oh, I really want to get into school at whatever cost. So I believe sometimes when students do this, that is when they find themselves in these very difficult situations. Because sometimes these mentors that are end up not being the ideal people, sometimes they are popular for it already. That's what I would say. Sometimes you come to a university system, they'll tell you, oh, this professor is difficult, that professor. Somehow, almost everybody knows them somehow. Yes, even though they may end up not saying anything, but this information are there out there somewhere. So if you follow due process and you make an effort to find this information, because at the end of the day, two people working together goes a long way to help your process as a graduate. I would say I've thrived as a graduate student mainly because of my advisor, because of her understanding and trying to teach you in a way that you can be taught, and then you are able to improve as a person. So that has helped me personally. Most of the time when I pray, I'm grateful for her. That's just the truth. It's like I look at it and I see some other student in some other situations. I'm like, oh, I'm really grateful for this person, because this has made it easier for me to navigate this very difficult system. Being here alone, I just feel like I can rely on this person and talk to them even beyond the academic situation, even with personal issues. And they can, first of all, treat you as a human being, even before the students and everything. So I think that it's very important for students to go out of their way to find this information before venturing into, traveling all the way to come and start the schooling process.
I guess I'll make a comment from the other perspective and say that's excellent advice. When I talk to prospective students, I tell them one of the most important decisions that you will make is who you select to work with in a lab. And indeed, I think funding plays a really important role because, of course, you need an assistantship and folks with funding, they offer assistantship. You don't have a lot of options. So it makes it really, really hard. But Amaka is correct in that this decision is really important and should not be only based on availability of funding. It should be based on criteria that you've established as important for you to succeed in the graduate program. Graduate school is hard. It's difficult. It's challenging. It's not just taking classes. It's sort of working with people outside of the classroom, working on challenging projects and going, failing and working with someone. And it's just very complex and difficult. It is made even more difficult when there's a lot of misunderstanding, when there's no trust. And I think in situations where you're able to rotate or do a rotation, that's ideal because you get a chance to spend a little bit of time and learn the culture of the program. Programs have cultures, right? Some people have high expectations and they expect independence. Some people have a little bit more structure to it. Some PIs are never around because they're traveling and busy and you're working with technicians or working with postdocs, and all of that is fine. Well, it's not fine, but it's what it is. What you need to determine is which of these situations are ideal for you. Some students don't want a lot of management. They're very independent. They don't need a lot of engagement. Some need that engagement. Some feel as though they're going to spend time with the PIs and end up working with technicians and they don't have day-to-day interactions. And that's a compatibility issue. So I think it's really important to, one, do your due diligence, as Amaka said, but don't only talk to the PI. Talk to the students, all the students. Yeah. Students who succeeded in the program, students who failed out of who did not complete the program, because all will give you a different perspective on what it's like to be in the lab. You will find a student in a difficult situation and say they like it. They like it because it appeals to what they want. They want independence. They want a lot of, and some of this, so that's not for me. So you have to collect all that data and determine if that's a good fit for you and what your expectations might be. It's hard, particularly when you're not on the campus to do your due diligence. If you have an opportunity to visit the campus, everybody will say it's like a first date. Everybody will say and act the best way they can, but it's important for you to ask those challenging questions. how do students that came from this program, where are they now? Did they achieve the goals they set for themselves? Do they get to travel to meetings? Are they lab meetings? What are they like? Is it high pressure? Is it low pressure? Those are hard questions, but they need to be asked so you can feel comfortable with the situation you're in. And then the second part of the question is, how do you, when you find yourself in a difficult situation in terms of a supervisor, how do you sort of transition away from that? And it's very difficult in terms of funding, right? So your funding is generally tied to your project. And if you're international, it becomes even more problematic. If you decide you cannot continue, your funding won't go with you, right? So you have to find another person who will provide you with an assistantship. I would say the graduate coordinator or the graduate program director is key in navigating and negotiating that transition from your current situation to another one. It's really important to identify, well, okay, I'm going to move from this lab and I'm going to do it in a way that allows me to land in a good spot. Because if you leave prematurely and your funding is cut, then it's going to really interrupt your ability to proceed. And that's going to be very disruptive. So I think strategically talking to your graduate coordinator or your department chair in order to transition away from a program is the best way to avoid sort of undue disruptions that might limit your ability to continue in the program.
My comment on this is maybe try to add a different dimension on this. I think that most of you are professionals or grad students, right? So maybe, begin to think about what is going to be the next stage, right? And, when you finish and when you are trying to look for a job, right? And some of the considerations that were made before are very valid equally in that stage. I also think that, somehow you come better prepared to that next stage because you actually went through grad school and to have to get adapted, and understand a little bit more the culture. But one major advice maybe to be very, very conscious when you are looking for a job to try to understand the culture of the organization in which you are going to be working with, right? I mean, and because, sometimes it's not as easy if you are going to apply for a private company, for example, to understand what are the programs or the opportunities or things that you could be, take advantage of entering into a different organization, because you might not be able to actually look in a web page and actually find out if they have mentoring programs or other kind of programs, right? But try to get sure that you include those more culture related questions and and be inquisitive about those things, and also be aware that when you move into a job outside a university, you're outside a university, right? I mean, and so you're not protected by an environment in which it's kind of unique, right? I mean, we all know that you walk a few blocks away from campuses and things are a little bit different than what they are in the campuses, right? And so consider more if you are moving like miles away or to a completely different state or something like that. So be careful and aware of those things and be conscious, right? And the last thing is, I think that we all need to be bold also, right? We need to be able to take risks, right? I mean, yes, you have to be careful and know everything, but you're never going to know 100% of the things that are going to happen in your life, right? And so you have to take risks, and sometimes but from mistakes or errors or things that don't go well, you learn a lot too. And lives are long, and we have to learn from those experiences, right? And become wiser with those. So, I mean, I think back in my life, and I even took jobs sometimes without asking how much they were going to pay me, okay? And because I thought, well, what the heck, I am still young. I have to, to be able to take a risk, right? And so I think that if I look at the names of the people that are online, there are a lot of people that are probably coming from other parts of the world. When we come from other parts of the world, it's impossible to know everything, right? We have to take risks, right? And we have to trust that we are gonna somehow come afloat, right? I mean, we will do it, you know. But at the beginning, it's a struggle, and we learn from that. And I think that all the rest of you will agree with me that we learned in this process, right? I mean, every time you have to do it again, you would do it a little bit different, maybe better. And sometimes we learn more from our own experience, our own failures, than from all the advices that other people could have given us in the past, right? And so be patient and, you know, capitalize on your own experience and knowledge too.
Yeah, if I can add, I would say, because we're all international, or we're comfortable with risks. We take these large risks and we leave our homes, we leave our comfort zones, and we put our belongings in a suitcase, and we travel across the world, and we trust people to support us and to help us and guide us. And our investment, I can include myself, is tremendous, right? It's a leap of faith. And so I think it's important, and I agree with you, Tabare, but we want to make sure that the risk is not so high, because along the way, lots of people have taken these risks and it hasn't turned out well. And it's not because of them, it's because the environment they came into did not prepare them to succeed. And that cost is something that I really don't. Every time a student comes to our program, and they don't succeed because of something that's not them, right? So they would do well in one program, but they ended up in another program that isn't prepared to support them, and they don't do well. I see that as a tremendous loss, loss in self-confidence, loss of investment of human capital. And people walk away feeling broken. They feel like they failed when indeed the system didn't properly support them. So I guess I would want them to be as informed as possible when they make decisions to mitigate the chances of not succeeding, because there's so much invested. But I do appreciate that we will make mistakes, we will stumble, and those things make us stronger and more informed and more experienced. And indeed, I did the same as you. When I was offered an opportunity to go to school, I said yes. I wasn't even sure where I was going to be. I was going to be in Tifton, Georgia, and I didn't do my due diligence on where that was or culturally what it might mean. And in fact, I gained a lot from being in that uncomfortable space. I grew, I learned about myself, and I became better prepared to be in uncomfortable spaces. But indeed, for everyone that succeeds, and there are some that don't, and I'm concerned about the loss that might happen in that case.
So a follow-up question, Dr. Walcott. So based on your experiences, are there any specific programs or initiatives that you have taken at your institute? And what were the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, so we talked about Grad First, and that was a huge lift because I had to make it mandatory for every first-year student to have a chance, whether they're in Tifton or Griffin or wherever, to have a chance to have these conversations. What can you expect? How can you better prepare yourself to succeed in your first year? What resources are available to you? You would be surprised that students would be in our programs for 4 or 5 years and not realize that we have student care and outreach, that we have opportunities for financial support, emergency funds, psychological or counseling and psychological services that you're not even aware that they're available, so you can't take advantage of them. And that was a failing on our part. So we want to make sure that every student is aware, regardless of what program you're in, that you're aware of the resources available to you and that you're not alone in your journey to pursue this PhD. Sometimes you feel like you're alone and you can't be honest with yourself about what you know and what you don't know for fear of revealing too much about yourself. This helps students feel more confident that, yes, I can ask for help and there's an appropriate way to do so that doesn't compromise my standing in my program. I am a strong advocate for mentor training. We haven't instituted it for all faculty, but we're shifting the culture to where we expect you to do certain things for your students and be available to support your students. And I'm hopeful that we can create more mandatory mentor training programs for our students. And then the other thing that we promote strongly, but we don't mandate, is things we call mentor-mentee compacts. So what we want is for the mentors, the PIs, and their students to sit down together and agree to how they're going to engage. We're going to meet on Monday every 2 weeks. You're going to prepare this. You're going to do this. So there's no miscommunication. There's no misunderstanding. So we have a lot of problems is incompatibility and misunderstanding. By having these, they're not contracts per se, but they're sort of rules of engagement. So we're clear every month, every other Monday, you're going to give me a summary of what you did in the last week or 2 weeks. I'm going to provide some input. I'm going to be always available to meet with you on this day. So those rules that we agree to, so that we're not sort of my major professor, I don't get to see him or her because they're always busy. I'm struggling to get help. We want to establish some structure around the engagement. So Mala, that's a couple of examples of things that we want. And then we strongly encourage independent or individual development plans for graduate students. Where are your shortcomings? Where do you need help? Is it writing? Is it oral presentation? And then specific ways that we address those shortcomings so you can become, you can address the things you need to address to become better at moving into the next level. So structural things that will help guide the engagement and not have it be so inconsistent.
So I think I would like to add something here that is a little bit different in the private sector than what it is in a university the kind of mentoring that we encourage is a non-hierarchical mentoring, right? I mean, your mentor, your supervisor, has a mentoring role, but it's not your mentor, right? I mean, we work on having people having mentors that are outside that hierarchy. And I think it's fine. It's just the nature of the organizations, right? Because in organizations, in the private sector, making broader connections across the organization is very, very important. And we try to facilitate those connections via non-hierarchical mentoring. And I think that's also something that the societies can provide, right? I mean, and by the way, we are providing that, the kind of mentoring relations that we provide are non-hierarchical. I mean, we are not supervising. I mean, we are not deciding on the, on the payment or on the benefit that the person could actually have through their work. So you kind of provide an opportunity for people to be engaged in a little bit. I mean, there's still a hierarchy on things, but it's a little bit less structured than in other organizations, and I think that's an opportunity. I mean, I a lot of times get questions of people getting an offer or going into an interview or something and asking, what would you recommend? And I have nothing to do with that situation, so I can give a little bit of a less biased, perspective on things that would add, to the information package that the person can actually bring together when they make a decision.
I think for me, from the graduate student perspective, again, I feel like students also have a lot of role to play, to push yourself. At the end of the day, you are your own biggest cheerleader. You don't always want to sit in the corner and feel sorry for yourself and say, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm minority, this and that. At the end of the day, when you do the PT card, it doesn't help you at the end of the day. So I feel like as international students, you're coming in, try as much as possible to push yourself. Don't always take no for an answer. That's it. Sometimes people would even discourage you, but when they see that you are making strides, they also begin to encourage you because they see that, yeah, you have that personal willingness to keep going. You're not waiting for anybody to keep encouraging you. Yeah, difficulties would come along the way, but if you have that internal zeal within you to not give up, somehow it shows. And then eventually you see things will fall in place. So don't always project things on people. Don't always expect people to do for you. Oh, I want my mentor to do this. My PI should do this. Also take some responsibilities for yourself. Try as much as possible to find these things, ask questions, get connected to people. Do your own due diligence as a person. There is, everybody is not mean. Everybody is not unkind. There are still really good people who will go out of their way to help you. But sometimes people don't know what you're going through unless you speak up, unless you try to say, oh, I need this thing, I need that thing, I'm trying to do this. How can you help me? So when you begin to go out of your way to look to make things happen, you see them begin to happen. So you try as much as no matter how difficult it is, you don't give up. You keep doing your own part as a human being. Don't just put it all on people and expect them to always worry about you. People have their own problems at the end of the day. The PIs are human beings. They have their family. They have their work. They have so many things. So if you don't always remind them of your own issues, yes, they can divert their attention and do other things because they'll feel like, oh, you are okay, you're fine. So you try to also play your part before you begin to complain and all of that. Make sure you are doing your part as a student. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I echo that, I mean, take control in a way, take control, find what are the parameters, understand the situation and take control, drive your own career in a way, right? I mean, make your own contacts and, I know that sometimes, I mean, it's kind of hard, but it's still a good advice to tell people that they have to try to take control of things. I don't know. That's my feeling.
So I want to add a personal story to this. Maybe I hope I'm not sharing too much, but when I was in my PhD program, I had a daughter and a wife. And if I present to my major professor, it's just me, then he would go, why are you not out doing the work? And I would say, well, I'm in Tifton, my family's in Athens, that's 3.5 hours away. I have some special needs. I have some expectations that I need to meet. I'm a father and I'm a husband. If I don't share that with my major professor, he or she can't help me, right? So again, I need to be honest about what is constraining me in my role, so that we can negotiate an accommodation that allows me to proceed in my work without having this lack of understanding. So for example, if I didn't say to my major professor, oh, my young daughter and my wife are living in Athens and every weekend I'm driving 3 hours back and forth, then he would not know that these are the things that are impacting my ability to succeed. But by advocating for myself and saying, these are the things that I need in order to succeed, and having the major professor that says, that makes so much sense. Let's figure out a way. Again, the work needs to be done because the major professors have expectations. Amaka, you're absolutely correct. We have to get our grants funded. We have to do our research. We have to do the work. The work is important, but we can, if it's clear what your needs are to help you achieve what, again, negotiate the path forward that considers both of our concerns, we can succeed. If you don't say what it is you need, it cannot be addressed. If you're not saying you're having some mental health challenges or there's some other issues that's affecting your productivity, it can't be addressed. If you do say the accommodation may not be in the way you want it, but it can be negotiated, right? So maybe we can't have you do it this way, but maybe we can have you do it this way so we can address your needs. My point is, you have to advocate for yourself and you have to be able to negotiate what that would look like. You won't get to work from home all the time because you're in a plant breeding program, right? But we can talk about ways to facilitate your needs and the PI's needs in a way that we can get you in a place that we can both succeed. So I think self-advocacy is critically important, but also understand that you have to negotiate. You have to work with your supervisor, your PIs to meet the expectations for the program.
Probably have time for one more question if anybody in the group's got anything.
Can I ask a question to Dr. Tabare Abadie?
Sure, Maria. Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, I would like to know what Corteva is doing to ensure the equal opportunity and inclusion for international students. This question is because once I finished my master's, I tried to apply for different companies, and sometimes they ask if you need the sponsorship, and when you say that you need, sometimes you lose the opportunity. So I'd like to know more from you, what are the opportunities?
Maria, so there are several things that maybe, we could consider on this, right? I mean, but we have a specific program that is called the Delta program, which is a program in which we invite people from certain, minorities or categories that have been predefined by NSF, right? And that do include Latinos, by the way. In which, we invite them to come and visit Corteva, and we give the opportunity for people to get to meet managers and to learn about our organization. And we put them in touch with specific hiring managers that are present at the meeting. So the students, can actually get to know, make contacts, and in some cases, even get offers, right, directly from that. So in those cases, you can address topics of cultural topics. You can try to understand better what is the culture of the organization, what are the policies of the organization regarding inclusion, diversity, and equity. And you can even also talk about immigration issues, right? And so that is a very specific program that we have. We have 75 students coming to our campus in Johnston earlier this year in April. And, and we, in all of them, at least get out with a mentoring relation, right? And since I am I do a lot of mentoring, I even today, I had 2 conversations with people coming out of that program in which we were talking about how to keep, on those, what are the personal goals and how can we support those personal goals. And those goals could be coming to work to Corteva, of course, we would love that, but it's not the only one, right? I mean, other people have other objectives in life, and we work with them, or at least I do, to try to help them achieve those goals. So that is one of the things. I think we have other programs that are also pretty, in which we also try to be very open and inclusive and take, incorporate diversity, like our internship program. And if you are familiar with the Symposia series, that's another program that has taken inclusion even to a completely different level, because one of our objectives is to take inclusion even to the universities in Africa and India and China and Brazil and Argentina and other places, under the consideration that science cannot be just limited to the US, right? I mean, and that the world needs scientists, and that we have a channel to communicate and to expand, the possibilities of networking and integration across the world through programs and and through the web, right? I mean, taking advantage that we have the web as a great opportunity for integration around the world. I don't know if I clarified.
You did. Thank you very
Maria,
much.
Como você quiser.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time and really appreciate the panelists for taking the time today to join us in this conversation. But I think that's it for today. Mala, did you have some announcements about upcoming events that we have?
Yeah, so we have 2 more webinar series lined up on June 2nd and June 5th. Both the webinars have been posted on the social media. So June 2nd is a webinar by Dr. Alison Bentley, Delivering the Crops for the Future. And June 5th webinar is in collaboration with the Commercial Plant Breeding Committee, NAPB, which is on preparing your dream career in industry setting. So make sure that you register for those events and attend, and try to follow us on follow us on the social media for more updates. So one more last request. If you could turn on your cameras, I would like to take a picture to post it on social media. Thank you. Few more to go. All right. This will work. Thank you very much.
If you don't mind, I would like to thank everybody for the opportunity. I think it's been a great interaction, and it's just a point that was mentioned in the past, is to encourage other groups also, like minorities, to be aware of the need for expanding into the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it's not only one group, but it's everybody else should understand what's going on, and I think it's really relevant. Sharing experiences is super critical. Sometimes we feel like we are the only ones with problems, but others went through similar situations. So knowing what to expect, knowing the ups and downs, the excitement about coming to, like, let's say the US, but then you will crash because you're missing many things. But knowing that that is expected could probably help you overcome the problems and moving forward. Also, try to find groups that you belong to, where you feel happy, supported. It's good to go out of your groups too, but at least you have a group you can go back to when you need it. And once again, thanks to everybody for this opportunity to listen to your experiences.
Maria, I do want to say one last thing. I know I'm speaking maybe more than I should, but pioneers are very important. Being the first person to do something is hard, but it opens up avenues for not only people that look like you to see your success and see themselves successful, but it helps other people that are not part of your group to understand how best they can support you, because they don't understand your experience as an immigrant, as a pioneer, as the first of any group to be in that space. So your job is really hard, but it's really important to help create the path for others to follow behind you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm really happy to be part of this conversation, and special thanks to my advisor, Dr. Isabel. Thank you for joining in, and thank you for all your support so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.